Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, August 3rd, 2015, getting into August here and getting out of summer. It's starting to feel quite autumnal out here on the island of Oahu, and that's not including the storm we've got coming in later this week. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. Tom is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Now, as you heard on the SRN news break, there is a huge push to get the Congress to kill the Iran deal. All those members of Congress are lined up. They're bowing toward Netanyahu. They're bowing toward AIPAC. They're davening toward Tel Aviv, and they're out there. They're going to find some way to kill this because that's what Israel wants, and to heck with what anybody else does. By the way, Fox News keeps insisting that they have a poll showing the vast majority of Americans are opposed to the Iran deal. I can't find any confirmation anywhere else. The polls we ran here on our website were overwhelmingly in favor of this deal moving forward here. So Fox News is laying it on very, very thick. Remember, Fox News, the synthetic bovine growth hormone network. Now, we're hearing that Chuck Schumer is being lobbied intensely. His office got 10,000 phone calls over the last 2 weeks, which they admit are organized by a professional group trying to kill the deal. There has been a 7-figure ad campaign on TV in New York City trying to pressure Schumer to oppose it. AIPAC is up there saying, you've got to kill this for us, and Schumer is starting to look like, oh, okay, all right, sure, I'll kill it. Now, Iran is once again out there saying that statements made by the White House regarding the substance of the Iran deal are misleading. In fact, it says many of them are simply untrue. They're being put out there for domestic consumption for you, the American people, but they don't actually represent what was agreed to. And we saw this before back on the preliminary framework, where they came out and said, this is what Iran has agreed to, and Iran said, no, that's not what we agreed to, setting the stage for Iran to basically dig in their heels at requests not in the agreement, and the U.S. able to say, oh, see, they broke the agreement they made. They broke the promise. It's a very typical little dirty trick negotiators like to do. Now, we are already seeing the corporate media line up in support of Israel on this situation. There was an op-ed over at the Wall Street Journal basically saying that Obama has a blind spot toward anti-Semitism, as illustrated by his approach to Iran. How dare he go and anybody making friends with Iran is clearly guilty of anti-Semitism. This is Ruth Weiss, a scholar of Yiddish and contemporary literature. And she got published in the Wall Street Journal saying this. Now, another one, this came out of the JewishPress.com, basically saying that Obama is making anti-Semitic comments. He's demonizing Jews in his talks about the Iran deal. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The particular quote from Obama that they're reacting to is, quote, lobbying taking place on the other side is fierce, well-financed, and relentless, end quote. That is exactly word for word what Obama said. And the Republican Jewish Coalition issued a statement saying, obviously he's talking about the Jews with that statement. So they're really out there in terms of this stuff. No, Obama's statement is accurate. The opposition to the Iran deal is relentless, well-financed, but I didn't hear the word Jew or Israel anywhere in there. But, you know, the Republican Jewish Coalition, any chance to spin this as anti-Semitism so they don't have to talk about the actual issues. Now, if, in fact, as SRN was reporting, they have got a bill to go through Congress to kill the Iran deal and a veto-proof majority, which I think is far from certain, all they're going to do is take the U.S. out of Iran's economic future. Because Spanish ministers are headed to Tehran to discuss renewed economic ties, bilateral relations, tourism, all that kind of stuff. And executives of Italy's oil giant are going to be in Tehran tomorrow striking deals. So what's going on here, you've got Spain, Italy, probably a bunch of these other countries are already on their way to Iran to strike deals for natural gas, for petroleum, for new markets for their products, and American businesses are in a state of paralysis, unable to do anything, unable to get involved, while Congress obeys the will of Israel and tries to kill this deal. And what it tells us is we have a Congress in Washington, D.C. more concerned with Israel's whining than with the struggling U.S. economy. Our economy is not resilient enough to absorb this kind of interference for American oil and gas companies or American manufacturers to be held in a state of limbo waiting to see what's going to go on. By the time Congress gets done doing what it does, even if they fail to stop the Iran deal, American businesses will have been placed at a crippling disadvantage because all the other nations of the world are already in Tehran making deals. And that tells you all you need to know about the U.S. Congress. With our economy in as terrible a shape as it is, and still what Israel wants, Israel gets. And it is shameless. Now, Barack Obama has authorized airstrikes on Syria to defend ISIS. Remember ISIS, the people we were told last month were the bad, evil people coming to kill us in our sleep? Well, now Obama is sending in airstrikes to defend ISIS from Bashar al-Assad. And apparently this is in response to some major setbacks that Assad's forces have dealt these U.S.-funded and trained mercenaries that have been trying to overthrow Assad for going on 4 years. And so Obama is apparently convinced that you will not remember that ISIS are supposed to be the bad guys from all those Rita Katz videos. And a lot of people are saying basically Obama is taking sides in what was supposed to be a civil war, the rebels against Assad. And the U.S. is now bombing Syria, and they're not even hiding the fact. They're bombing Assad's forces. They're bombing Assad's infrastructure. They've given up trying to pretend that they're bombing Syria to help Assad defeat ISIS. Complete reversal, 180 degrees. We've always been at war with East Asia. I mean, that's how overt it is. George Orwell nailed it right in the middle of a news broadcast. The friends and enemies are swapped. And you're supposed to not notice it because you're a loyal, patriotic American who believes what you're told to believe by the corporate media. Now, a lot of people are very concerned about this talk over a safe zone in Syria. And in theory, aimed against ISIS, which doesn't have a credible air force at this point. But this is a major escalation of the war. It's exactly what the U.S. was doing over Iraq, getting ready to invade there as well. And everyone is saying this is clearly a U.S. provocation. It's only going to escalate the situation across the region. And yes, it will. Boy, they've mucked this one up really, really good. Meanwhile, the U.S.-trained Syrian rebels who got kicked out are running into Kurdish territory, which allows Erdogan to justify more strikes against the Kurds. Everybody's shooting at everybody. Everybody's killing everybody. Now, apparently, one of the reasons Obama signed this authorization is there was an attack on the U.S. mercenaries in Syria, inflicted a major defeat, and Washington is apparently saying, how dare these people we've been bombing fight back at us? They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to roll over and die and accept their U.S. puppet ruler. And so this is why we're seeing Washington, D.C. do this. They're not even trying to hide the fact who the real target is anymore. They want Assad out. They created Al-Qaeda and ISIS to control the Middle East. Everybody knows it, and the bombs are falling. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show today, and I was looking in the email coming in, and somebody sent in a comment about the Iran deal that I think needs to be repeated all across the country. And they wrote, kill the Iran deal, and you'll be killing your own children, because they will be sent to fight and die in Iran. And that's exactly what's going on. Everybody who's out there saying, oh, let's kill the deal with Iran, they're not really thinking very far into the future, because killing the Iran deal is a stepping stone to invading Iran and seeing more Americans come back home in wheelchairs or cheap metal boxes draped with the American flag made in China. That's what's on the line here. So kill the Iran deal and you'll be killing your own children as they'll be sent to fight and die in Iran. It's a good quote here. All right, now then, getting on back to the U.S. bombing of, well, everybody, actually. There's an independent monitoring group, Air Wars, that tracks airstrikes around the world and says that U.S.-led airstrikes supposedly against ISIS, which we know was created by the U.S. as a straw man to justify invasions. But they're saying these airstrikes supposedly targeting ISIS and always missing, I might add, have already killed hundreds of innocent non-combatant civilians. At least 459 that they're able to document. So right now the U.S. is leading the world in the killing of unarmed non-combatant civilians in war zones. Now here's an article over in journalneo.org, The Fake War on ISIS, which everybody now knows what's going on here. The U.S. and Turkey are trying to escalate the situation in Syria and basically entrenching themselves in this war which the U.S. and Turkey created to try and get Assad out. Turkey's in trouble, though. Erdogan's constant obeisance to Washington, D.C., and what is seen inside Turkey as clear provocations and aggressions against their neighbors in Syria are starting to divide his nation. And there's actual talk of a potential civil war inside Turkey itself, and even more so that Erdogan would actually welcome that in order to solidify his power, rather than risk being taken out of office through more conventional, peaceful means like elections. Now, there's another article over here in investigatingislam.org, Islamic State, a cartoon caricature of Islam, and it basically says everything that you're seeing about Islam in the Western media is propaganda. It's cartoons, it's staged videos to present an image of Islam that is just hopelessly out of touch with the reality. And remember, if you go back and you study the propaganda coming out of Nazi Germany, you will see exactly the same kind of treatment of foreign nationals or the Jews. And the U.S. is engaged in exactly the same thing against Islam. Every tyrant needs a manufactured scapegoat on which to blame everything that's going wrong. It's Emmanuel Goldstein all over again. Now, up in Russia and Ukraine, things are getting very, very tense. Ukraine is on the edge of a fiscal default, even though the money junkies continue to pour money all over it, standing quite in contrast with Greece. The former Prime Minister, Azarov, is putting together what he calls the Committee for the Rescue of Ukraine. It's a government in exile. We were talking about that last week, just like when the Nazis invaded France. The legitimate French government left France, formed a government in exile to work for the restoration of their power, their authority, taking France back from the Nazis. And adding to Poroshenko's problems, in addition to a government in exile, basically hammering home the point that Kiev's government is illegitimate, there's a growing movement within Ukraine itself from their nationalists. Talk about overthrowing Poroshenko, just kicking him out. They're calling it the new phase of the Ukrainian revolution. So there may actually be a military coup against Poroshenko. Now, Poroshenko is out there trying to get everybody to come to his aid. And he's out there once again saying, Putin is going to attack the Baltic states. He's going to come in. He's going to invade Finland. He's going to invade the Black Sea states. And that, Kiev is not just fighting a civil war, but is fighting for democracy, freedom, and the security of all of Europe. Poroshenko's definitely got an exaggerated sense of self-importance. Maybe he's been eating too much of his own chocolates again, and he's high on the neurotransmitters. But he's out there trying to get Europe to come to his aid by saying, we're fighting for the future of all of Europe because we are the bulwark against the aggressions of Vladimir Putin, who's basically been sitting back and doing absolutely nothing. Everybody knows the situation in Ukraine began in January of 2014 with the U.S.-backed coup d'etat against a legitimate government. All righty, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Andrew in New York, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. Hey, Michael. Looking back at history, like, we know, like, FDR, like, provoked Pearl Harbor by cutting oil supplies to Japan. Well, the U.S. is doing the same thing with China. Like, for example, we invaded Libya that has, they had, like, 30,000, Chinese oil workers. And also, like, we're targeting, like, we want to go to war with Iran. So it's like been supplying, like, was like the major supplier of oil to China, and the same thing with Iraq. We invaded it because, like, it was oil with China.
Well, that was one of the reasons involved. The primary reason for invading Iraq was in the process of setting the precedent that Mideast oil could be sold for currencies other than the U.S. dollar. And that was a big part of what was driving that forward, is because as long as the petrodollar system was in place, the U.S. financial system made money off the oil trade regardless of who was pumping it and who was burning it up. And that, of course, Iraq was a threat to that. Libya was a threat to that. But you're right about one thing. There's no question that the U.S. is trying to provoke Russia and China into some state of conflict that can be used to discourage America's allies from trading in the yuan and the ruble to keep them enslaved to the U.S. Federal Reserve note.
And one thing is, like, with these, like, old interventions in the Middle East, like, and around the world, like, the U.S. has built itself, like, the image of the bully of the world. Like, if you go to other countries, you realize, like, Americans are hated, and, like, it's not because, like, our freedoms are what George W. Bush is, like, it's because, like, we're, trying to overthrow the government, or, like, we're doing drone.
That's exactly right. You're exactly right.
And one thing about Donald Trump is, like, what I think about Donald Trump, like, I think he's a sincere person, but it's like that's what happened with the George W. Bush election. Like, do you remember about the letter thing? Like, that said that he didn't, like, really serve in the military, like, he didn't go to the meeting. And everybody believed that, but what happened is, like, it was declared a forgery.
Yeah, that was a poison the well story, and Dan Rather got hammered by that little bit of a fraud there. All right, we got to let you go for a commercial break. We'll be back with more phone calls after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. The phone lines are loading up here. We're going to get some calls out of the way. Keith in Montana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike. I just had a quick comment for you there. It's kind of like a tale of two cities or two nations there. One, with all the hype from Kiev and NATO and the United States and even Germany and those of the so-called advancement of Russia into the Ukraine, if you look up to the size of Ukraine and the demarcation lines outside of Donbass and stuff like that, if that's the advance of the Russian army, then the Russian army's in sad condition.
Oh, come on. If Russia really wanted to invade Ukraine, they'd be in Kiev in just 48 hours.
I know. Well, here's a spin-off, the other nation or city. Likewise, if they're looking for a world war, with the U.S. sending hundreds of millions of dollars to overthrow the Assad government, democratically elected, overtake Iraq and all this, then they're in a sad situation. And they want a war with Iran or Russia?
Well, like I said, I think the reason why Obama went ahead with the deal with Iran is not because he's feeling warm and fluffy toward the Iranian people, but because he's realizing the U.S. military is already overextended and he's going to have to triage the wars. He can't take on the entire planet all at the same time, and so he wants to put Iran on a back burner, get Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Syria under control, then maybe go back and deal with Iran. And unfortunately, of course, Israel is saying, kill everybody now, let God sort them out, attack Iran, attack Iran, attack Iran.
Yeah, I think there's an ulterior motive there, as I probably mentioned before there. Put Iran's oil in the market to drive the price of oil for Russia into another tailspin like that to further destabilize Russia.
Yeah, but the last time they did that, it caused more harm here in the West than it did inside Russia.
And what's the difference? What did Einstein say about insanity?
Insanity, yeah. Boy, I have to wonder about all of these leaders in all these countries, whether it's Washington, D.C. or Tel Aviv or London. they don't seem to have very good thought patterns evidenced in their actions. It really does seem like they're being driven by ego. They're hearing voices in their head, and they're confusing it for the imaginary playmate in the sky, or they're thinking about their place in the history books. And there's not a lot of what I would call cool, calm reasoning coming out of any of these capital cities right now, except for Moscow. I have to give Putin his due. He is definitely the master chess player right now.
Well, he's been a diplomat on everything. Matter of fact, I don't want to hold you there, but I was watching one of Noam Chomsky's, and I've emailed excessively with Noam Chomsky, but his idea of what he called what the U.S. calls peacekeeping, and it's the same scenario we see today, where under the articles of like humanitarian aid, it's where you're supposed to go in and help out firms like the Red Cross and stuff, help the displaced and stuff, but that's not what the U.S. does. They send in U.S. aid, and that's why you see, as you mentioned before, Russia kicks out U.S. aid, another country kicks out U.S. aid, and all these other NGOs and stuff. And this is not a peaceful nation to be doing that. No. They are actually causing war, just like over in Syria.
That's exactly right. What they've done is after World War II, the United States adopted a more covert approach to expand its empire. No more frontal invasions, which given Vietnam was a wise policy to follow. But yeah, we've seen this 50 times since the end of World War II. Go into a country, find the opposition, fund them, kick up riots and protests, drive the elected government from power, and install a U.S. puppet ruler. And the rest of the world is now aware this is what the U.S. has been doing. I think that's one of the real reasons they hate Iran so much, because the Iranian Revolution of 1979 sounded the wake-up call as to what was going on, because the U.S. is out there screaming, hostage crisis, ooh, bad Iran, but everybody understood this was the inevitable fallout from the U.S. 1953 overthrow of Mohammad Mossadegh.
Yeah, well, this goes right back to your video and dialogue on your PDF fire about the all wars are bankers' wars. That video on YouTube, they keep removing it. It's called Shock Treatment. That Naomi, what's her name? She narrates the thing there, but it's the same thing, whether it was Iran, Chile, all the Central South American things. Mm-hmm. The shock and awe doctrine is what they use, just like they did in Germany. They bombed 50-some cities. They caused a mass starvation by taking out rail, airport, naval, everything like that, hospitals. And this has been repeated over and over, whereas the IMF gets to capitalize on that by rebuilding those cities, causing mass austerity and debt. And this is repeated in country after country.
Yes.
And all you got to do when you look at a photo of whether it's of Iraq, Syria, just transpose those on some imaging thing to black and white. They look just like a World War II photo. I
was noticing that. Even some of the footage we're getting out of Ukraine, it looks like World War II Europe with all the bombed-out buildings and everything that's going on over there.
As well as Palestine.
Or Palestine, or Gaza, definitely. Just sepia telling them.
Love you, Mike.
All right. Talk to you later there, Keith. We're going to let you go and switch over to Tat in Michigan. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Tat, are you there? I cannot hear you. Okay, I'm going to put you on hold, and we are going to go over here to Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, the presidential debate's coming up. I thought I might watch them because I thought maybe we might get some answers, but I know it's not going to happen. There's just going to be an attack on Trump and everything he said, and the attack will be basically personal, and it won't ever address the questions, the problems he's posed, explain that we have in this country. It'll just be a personal attack. But, I started thinking about this morning. I was listening to another talk radio show, and they were talking about the big business of weapons manufacturing and sales in this country to other nations. And I thought, here's an industry that loves conflict, it loves war, it wants to keep war going on forever and ever because it profits from it. And I would love to see one of those questions posed to the politicians, the candidates, to say, we are in the business of keeping the world unsafe, keep conflict brewing, and keep trouble in order to make sales. And that's not good for the world. And I'd love to see somebody throw that question and say, what do you think about that? And would you put an end to all this weapon sales, which is increasing more hatred towards us, more terrorism, because we are the supplier to the other people that are using them on other people in other countries. It's just perpetual. It's just a round circle of hatred. We just keep the ball rolling in this area, and nobody. I'd love to see that question asked just one time and see what they'd have to say.
Well, unfortunately, when it comes to the corporate media, questions like that never do get asked. I'm sure that this first round of debates are going to be talking about Planned Parenthood and gay marriage, and obviously, since Trump has brought it up, they're going to be on immigration. But the presidential debates are basically an infomercial sales campaign, and no, they're not going to bring up these fundamental questions about the nature of the United States government and where it really sees its power and fortunes coming from.
Yeah, you just get the regular talking heads for the network that'll ask the softball questions that they're told they can ask and questions they can't ask. It really is ineffective. It's just really a waste of time. It really is.
Well, I'm probably going to tune in just because I do want to see how they try and bash and sideline Trump, because it's very obvious that's what they're trying to do. I mean, the GOP was trying to figure some way they could justify kicking Trump out of the debates, but he's polling in the number one place right now. It's kind of obvious to kick him out when he's the number one slot, and I don't think anybody's going to sit still for that. They're just going to alienate more GOP voters and drive them back over to the Democratic side. Okay?
Exactly. Yep.
All right,
Thanks,
well,
Mike.
you got it, Steve. We're going to let you go. We've got Pat in Michigan called back in again, but we're going to have to wait until after the commercial break. So, Pat, just sit there for 4 minutes, and we'll come right back to you as soon as we finish these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go right to the telephones and talk to Pat in Michigan. Aloha, Pat. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Today, Mr. President revealed a plan to combat climate change called America's Clean Power Plan, which the EPA could clean up 870 tons of carbon pollution by 2030. Could you elaborate on that and tell us how it could affect us, please?
Well, you know, that 800 tons of carbon pollution, I think we create that in just 3 days of war, to be very honest, so it's a token amount. But, you know, I've been telling you all along, what this is really about, this is about getting us all used to carbon taxes. They're going to start with coal, then they're going to move to gasoline, because from the government's point of view, every problem they create out of thin air is solvable only if you give them more money and more power over your lives. So we're going to have and I think the reason that Obama is doing it right now is we're already seeing indications that we're heading into another crippling, hard winter. And he can't wait any longer, because if it starts really cooling off, people are going to say, this, you know, the global warming stuff is nonsense. And, you know, they're in a bind because they're trying to use the phrase climate change, but whether or not limiting or taxing carbon is going to work or not depends on which way the climate is going. And if it's cooling, a carbon tax is going to have absolutely no effect. If anything, it's going to make things worse. Okay, so Obama is going for this. He's going to start with a carbon tax on coal, then there'll be a carbon tax on gas, and then there's going to be a tax on nitrogen, and a tax on snow, and a tax on clouds, and a tax on air and water and everything else, because basically the U.S. government is broke, and the carbon tax is just their latest desperate grab for what little is left in your pockets to save planet Earth from you icky-poo human beings. And it's nonsense. It's garbage. And, you know, this idea of reducing carbon pollution, first of all, contrary to what the EPA says, carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It is an essential component of life on Earth. And they actually thought that they could convince you carbon dioxide is evil, it's bad, and you're causing it, and you have to pay for it. And that's basically what they're doing. They're taking something that happens naturally, climate change, declaring it a crisis, and then offering to sell you a solution. Just, you know, give me $1 for this bottle here of miracle snake oil climate curing thing, and they go home happy.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Take care.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Now then, getting on over to Israel, and it does seem like Israel is trying to get something going as a distraction from not only their failure to get a headlock on the Iran deal, but the burning alive of that 18-month-old Palestinian baby, the attack on the gay pride parade in Jerusalem. And by the way, 16-year-old girl was one of the stabbing victims. She has now succumbed to her wounds. She's now die. So what does Israel do? Do they hang their head in shame and say, we're sorry these things are happening? Oh, no, no, no. We had 2 rockets fly out of Gaza toward Israel. One of them actually made it across the fence. The other one crashed inside Gaza. Oh, how dare they do that? And apparently the Israeli police raided the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem and got into a fight with Palestinian youths. Nobody knows why the police went in there. They just did. Started causing a ruckus. On top of that, Israeli authorities have allowed the opening of a coffee shop and a pub that is built on part of the land belonging to an historic Islamic cemetery in the old city of Jerusalem. And it's bad enough that they just said, forget about your dead people, we're going to commercialize this land. But to put a pub on there, knowing how Muslims feel about alcohol, was definitely pouring salt on the wounds there. So Israel's trying to do something that is going to provoke a response, which to Western sensibilities seems rather minor, but that way Israel can say, oh, look, it's all their fault that we're doing what we're doing to them. Gaza poverty is currently at 38.8% due to the blockade on Gaza here. All righty, let's see. We're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Damien in New York, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. We've got pushed right through there. So I just wanted to say about this whole climate change thing and their version of what climate change is, I should say, and this carbon tax and whatever other instruments. Those are, I mean, they're really just other little financial, tools, little implements that they can use to be able to shuffle money from one place to another. And just like you said, it's another transfer of wealth. It's another little scheme to be able to manipulate different markets and this and that, and probably create another bubble that's going to cause some more havoc.
Well, mostly it's about the failure of Obamacare, because Obamacare, by forcing us all to buy these much more expensive health insurance policies, and by the way, premiums are going to jump by as much as 51% with the new year. But a lot of people who couldn't afford health insurance before can't afford health insurance now. And the health insurance companies who created the Affordable Care Act are already out there screaming that they need bailouts at taxpayer expense because they didn't get the expected billions and billions of dollars in new revenue. And, of course, the U.S. government isn't getting their piece of the action through taxes because it's been an abysmal failure. And so as a result, this is why Obama is coming back with the carbon tax, because the federal government is desperate for more of your money to try and keep up the payments on this out-of-control national debt, which shouldn't exist at all, because the Constitution allows the U.S. government to create and issue its own debt-free money. But 100 years ago, a corrupted Congress and a corrupted president sold this nation back into the same banker slavery we fought a revolution to be free of, where the government borrows all the money at interest from a privately owned central bank and then dumps the interest payments on you as future taxes. And because private central banks create more debt than money with which to pay the debt, you can never really pay that debt off. It just grows and grows and grows until it crushes the population and the nation. And that's what's going on here in the United States of America, all across Europe.
Yeah. I'll just say really briefly on that, there's no reason why of extremely healthy, I'm extremely healthy, and I'm in great shape. And there's no reason why I should be paying $400 a month for some kind of, for some health care plan that I never use. I despise doctors. I stay away from hospitals as much as possible. I don't need them.
Me too. Too.
Unless I get, God forbid, knock on wood, some sort of accident or something like that. The last time I had a problem, I was bitten by a spider. I should not have done this, but on the advice of a friend, I went to the emergency room. I ended up getting MRSA from the emergency room. I ended up in the hospital, hooked up to vancomycin, like 1.25 grams, because my body was processing it too fast to be able to actually penetrate and do any good. I was in the hospital for like 9 days. Yeah. Just because I went to the emergency room. That was my mistake. I should have just taking care of it myself. But just briefly, you might have mentioned this already at some point, but the whole thing with Ed Schultz and being booted off of MSNBC, it came right after him really getting into Hillary about the whole thing with her being non-committal stances on Keystone and several other things, and he's got his own show that he's doing now, and it would be kind of cool if you could get him on your show, and it'd be interesting because you guys have very similar things, but there's other dynamic there. I don't know.
Well, if somebody has some contact information, send it in. I'll try and get him on the show. I'm, trying to get more guests back on the show, especially as we head into this, the downfall of Hillary Clinton. We're trying to get Kathleen Willey to come on the show. And, people like that. So, and Larry Nichols, I'm going to make the reach out to Larry Nichols, try and get him on the show as well.
Well, great. This last thing, just the whole thing with Joe Biden, using his son, this is just disgusting.
No, it's not disgusting. No, what they're trying to do is create a reason for Joe Biden to enter the political race this late without admitting that the Democratic National Committee is in an absolute panic that they're currently riding the SS Clintonic down to destruction. So they can't just say, we're throwing Biden at you because we know you're not going to vote for Hillary. So they came up with this whole story about his son and everything. And, it's all, trying to make it look like it's perfectly okay for Biden to just step in and nobody's in a panic over Hillary. And this is just, that's what that is all about.
Well, just the fact that he's letting them use his son like this, it just is kind of disgusting.
He's a politician. He's a politician. Yeah. And anything they think is going to get public sympathy and support, that's what they're going to use. Okay? Damien, got to let you go. We're going to take a break for our top of the hour news break, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. 877-300-7645. Now then, there's been an interesting occurrence in that there was a plane crash that took the lives of Osama bin Laden's stepmother, his half-sister, and her husband. And it crashed into a parking lot at a car auction site just short of the Blackbush Airport in Surrey, England, killing all on board. Now, we all know that Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset. His code name was Tim Osman. He was instrumental in helping to rally the Mujahideen in Afghanistan during Charlie Wilson's war against the Soviet Union. And he was a CIA asset right up to the very end. In fact, shortly before 9/11, in July of 2001, bin Laden was in the American hospital in Riyadh dealing with his failing health, and he was met by officials from the CIA who came in, talked to him, even though he was being already accused of all these horrible terror attacks, and they came in, talked, and left. Witnesses said, they came and talked to him, and that was it. Well, obviously, with a growing awareness that 9/11 was a false flag hoax, and with the credibility and reputation of both the United States government and Israel hanging on that, it may be that somebody got a little bit nervous over bin Laden's family members knowing more than they should and being willing to possibly talk. Because according to experts, the plane that crashed was in excellent shape, had the latest fly-by-wire systems, the weather was clear. There was no reason for this thing to just fall out of the sky the way it did. So it may have been a little bit of the wet work that tends to show up anytime somebody gets nervous about certain cover-ups collapsing. Now remember that bogus staged shooting at the Muhammad cartoon contest? And the gunman basically got up to the front door and he was shot dead at this anti-Muslim event, and it just reeked of patsy. Well, there's more evidence saying that this was set up because apparently the gun this guy was using in Garland, Texas, was acquired through the Fast and Furious operation. So that has surfaced yet again. You want to ban guns? Let's start with the U.S. Department of Justice and their Fast and Furious program. And there's a real delicious irony there, because at the same time the U.S. government is saying you, the American people, cannot be trusted with assault-style weapons or guns in general, the U.S. government was spending your tax dollars to give those very same kind of weapons to drug criminals down in Mexico. And a lot of them came back up to the United States and were used in crimes here. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, over in Germany, in the city of Dresden, Apparently there is a refugee camp there that erupted in riots between the Syrians and the Afghans, and the German police had to go on in there and just club them all down, for lack of a better word. And it's rather interesting because the president of Czechoslovakia, Miloš Zeman, is out there saying that this migrant problem that's afflicting Europe right now is a direct result of the United States and the European Union's military operations in the Middle East. These people understand civilians are being killed, non-combatants are being killed. They are fleeing for their lives and safety. They're pouring into Europe, and the European infrastructure, social structure can't handle it, just like the U.S. can't handle this influx of illegal immigrants coming across the border from Mexico. And he's absolutely right. We're seeing the entire world get seriously messed up because of U.S. and EU foreign policy objectives. And I'm not even sure that they're all that clear on what those objectives are. Now, there was a story that came out of the foreign press, not being reported in the American media. There are major protests taking place across Libya among Gaddafi's supporters. They're standing up and saying they want the U.S. puppet rulers out. They want their own government back. They want their state bank back. They want the gold dinar back. They want their nation back from foreign rule. Good for them. I hope they do it. Now, today, the Greek stock exchange opened after 5 weeks being closed and immediately plummeted 23%. Greek manufacturing PMIs collapsed to a record low, 30.2 in July, versus 46.9 just the month before. So things are really coming apart because all this talk about Greece has got to pay, Greece has got to pay, at the same time, Greece's ability to earn money with which to pay back all these loans is being taken away from them through austerity. And the IMF is already out there saying no more money. Great Britain's saying no more money. Germany's starting to say no more money. Down in Puerto Rico, they've gone belly up. They missed their bond payment that was due on the 1st. And here's an article. I mentioned it earlier in the show. This is on Zero Hedge, holding up the comparison between the way Greece is getting slapped around versus Ukraine, which is still having money poured all over it by the money junkies to try and get this war with Russia going. Ukraine is useful for the foreign policy objectives. Greece is not. I don't think they or maybe this is the plan. Maybe if they abuse Greece enough, Greece will leave the European Union, pivot toward Russia, and then they can scream, oh, Putin's invading Athens, Putin's invading the Parthenon, it's the center of democracy and culture, we have to attack Russia now. Up in Switzerland, the image of the safe, secure Swiss banks just took a major clubbing. Switzerland's central bank just announced a loss of $52 billion over the last 6 months. And most of that was a decline in the value of their holdings in the euros. So the euro is losing value. It's in a race with the dollar, which can hit negative territory first here. Possibly as a result of that announcement, or possibly as a result of the euro dropping in value, Standard & Poor's, who had the gonadal tissue to declare the U.S. long-term outlook negative, has now done the same thing to the European Union. The European Union is now negative outlook based on Standard & Poor. So the news is bad from all over. Interesting little article over here in Investment Watch blog. Obama owns the worst economic numbers in this country for the last 80 years. Now, they're trying to drop the blame solely on Obama. No, it isn't. 100 years ago, a corrupt Congress and a corrupt president sold this nation back into the slavery of privately owned central banking, the very same system of banking we fought a revolution to be free of. Now, private central banks create more debt than money with which to pay the debt, and it builds and builds and builds until it becomes a crushing weight, and it's taken 80 years. During those 80 years, the owners of the private central bank grew rich, comfortable, arrogant, tyrannical. Obama just happened to become president at the time when it's all starting to come apart at the seams, which is not saying that there weren't steps that he could have taken to fix the situation, steps like what Andrew Jackson did, or Abraham Lincoln did, or John F. Kennedy did. So he bears some of the responsibility, but by no means all of it. U.S. factory activity has dipped last month. Consumer spending cools. And yet we get this weird statement from Milan Mulroney, Deputy Chief Economist at TD Securities in New York, saying, we can expect growth momentum to reaccelerate over the next few months. Sure we can. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And somebody who's watching the show on BAM User was noticing I've been fiddling around with the package here. And basically, it's a new scanner. And I'm glad I got it before the hurricane or tropical storm. It's not a hurricane anymore. It gets here this week. And the only reason I'm sharing that with you right now is my previous scanner died this last week. I cannot complain about it. I bought it back in the 1990s. It was wonderful, and I loved it, and it quit working. And I opened it up, and I found out what had happened is the batteries had leaked and corroded not only the battery compartment, this stuff just gooshed out of the battery up into the electronics. And I mention this because I'm one of those guys who's old enough to remember when you bought an Ever-Ready battery, it came with a guarantee that if the battery ever leaked, Ever-Ready would replace whatever was damaged by the battery. Now, admittedly, back then you're talking flashlights, which are not very expensive, but it just seems like today we can't even make a battery that doesn't leak. And it wrecks a lot of equipment, which is good for the economy because you have to buy a new scanner, and you have to buy a new camera, and you have to buy this, and you have to buy that. And, of course, these days the battery manufacturers are out there saying, well, you should just, take the batteries out when you're not using it. That's just common sense. So, yeah, the lights are out. I'm absolutely in the black, and I'm going to take the flashlight, open it up, put the batteries in, and then use the flashlight. Realism there. Can't even make a leak-proof battery anymore. All right, getting on back to the economy. We have been talking about how the powers that think they are using paper gold contracts and silver contracts to keep gold and silver prices down. They don't want you emptying your savings account to buy into precious metals. They don't want you liquidating your stock portfolio, going into metals, and most importantly, those bullion depositories that the New York Federal Reserve and J.P. Morgan and the rest, they're trying to buy up as much physical gold as they can to make good on gold that belonged to other people that they went out and played some games with, and now they can't get it back. And the way the scam works is they'll take the price of the paper gold contracts and combine them with the physical prices to make one price that's very, very low. And all they have to do is print out more of those paper contracts, and they can keep the prices down because there's a glut. Oh, look how much gold there is on the market. Supply and demand. Well, what's on the market isn't gold, it's paper. And right now, according to this article over here in Zero Hedge, there are 124 paper ounces of gold out there for every one real physical ounce of gold. Whether you call it leveraging or dilution, and it's all the same thing. They're overprinting those paper contracts. And there have already been a couple of scandals in Europe where people who buy these contracts, when the contract comes due, they try and get their physical gold. They can't get it. And the reason that the sellers of the paper contracts are not being sued out of existence as they ought to be for fraud, for failure to deliver, is they'll say, we'll resolve the contract with its cash equivalent at the current gold prices, which are being kept artificially low, plus we'll give you a little, 15-20% vigorish to make the problem go away. And so they crank out more ink and paper on the printing press, and these purchases of the gold contracts go away happy, thinking that they're taken care of. And they're not, because the physical paper and there's way too much of it out there. If there's a run on those paper gold contracts, if everybody holding those contracts demands physical fulfillment when they come due, there's going to be a firestorm. And at which point, I think we can count on the U.S. government to declare private ownership of gold coins and gold bullion to be illegal, just like Roosevelt did in 1933. Turn them all in here. We got to save those bullion banks. We got to save those bankers one more time. You got to give up your physical silver and gold. We'll give you big stacks of ink and paper. Ooh, look how big that stack of paper is. Don't you feel good about just giving us your physical silver and gold? And here's all this pretty printed piece of paper. Isn't that wonderful? That's the deal. That's what's going to happen. That's what Roosevelt did. Right now here in the United States of America, 1 out of every 30 children is homeless. That's among the legal American population. Nobody's got numbers for the illegals. How many of them are winding up homeless on the streets? The average age of America's homeless population is only 11 years old. Do you remember Charles Dickens' description of London, whether it's in Christmas Carol or all of that? All the children who were simply thrown out on the street. We're seeing that here in the United States of America. The average age of America's homeless population is only 11 years old. What's going on here? An 11-year-old kid should be with their family, should be with their parents, should be taken care of. It's a kid. We're talking kids. That's the reality here. And yes, our government and the corporate media is going to say, oh, everything's fine, and it's going to get better, and don't riot and don't revolt. You know, if you're going hungry and you've lost your home and your job, it's really your own fault. Don't blame us. We're doing the best that we can. Meanwhile, a little bit of good news over in Great Britain. Tom Hayes, one of the former yen derivatives traders at the United Bank of Scotland and Citigroup, has been tossed in jail for rigging benchmark interest rates, including the LIBOR. Former trader Hayes was found guilty of 8 counts of conspiring to commit fraud, sent to jail for 14 years. Good start. We need more of that. We need to take every one of these financial people who cuts corners, plays games, engages in deliberate fraud, and we need to put them away for a very, very long time. If you look at how much damage they have caused to ordinary law-abiding people, even 14 years isn't long enough. Somebody robs a convenience store and takes maybe 20 or 30 bucks, they go away for 20 years. These guys are taking millions. The punishment should be correspondingly more severe. Okay. Now then, Donald Trump has topped the new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll at 19%. Walker's in second place at 15%, Bush in third at 14%. The One American News Network poll showed Trump capturing 30.8% of those polled. Bush came in second place at 13.3%. And I'm sure the corporate media is trying to play down Trump's polling advantage. They're all ganged up against him because Trump has tapped into the general sense of discontent with politics as usual, with the status quo, things as they are, and people are responding to it. We'll be back with more about politics after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the race for the White House, and it's cranking up here. We're coming up on the first of the televised debates. I'm waiting to see just how it is they think they're going to somehow sideline Donald Trump when he is, in fact, leading in all the polls here. So anyway, we're seeing he's in the lead by anywhere between 4% to double digits. Just to give you an idea of how the corporate media is collaborating with the Republican National Committee to try and get Trump out of the race. They're doing the Ron Paul treatment on him. MSNBC has declared that Trump's campaign slogan, "Making America Great Again," is racist. We have to ban it right alongside that Confederate flag. I fail to see how Making America Great Again is racist, but MSNBC, they're grasping at straws. Trump has succeeded in tapping into the fact that the American people, by and large, are sick of Washington, D.C.'s business as usual. They're sick of the corruption. They're sick of being fed fringe issues to fret over while the real problems go unnoticed or unremarked by the corporate media. Trump has tapped into that. That's what's driving his numbers. And the more people see the corporate media and the Republican Party leadership give him that Ron Paul treatment, the better his numbers are going to get. And I hope that Donald Trump is being very careful. Because if they can't Ron Paul him, they'll Robert Kennedy him. He's that much of a threat to the current power wealth structure. Because he's got his own money. He does not owe anybody anything. He can't be bought. He's got too much money. And that's why he's a threat. The real power in this country, the money power, do not want anybody running for office that cannot be bought, either by themselves or by Israel. We're going to grab a phone call here. Delane over in Missouri. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, I just seen that Flo Wisdom sent was talking about autism, and I just seen a YouTube channel where...
Can you turn down that speaker in the background, because I'm having a hard time hearing you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so one more time.
I wanted to talk about autism.
Yes.
And I just seen a video where they have some type of drug over in England that can reverse autism, but they won't allow the drug in this country because it's being banned. And I believe the reason why the drug is being banned is because they can profit off of things like autism, cancer, and things of that nature.
Yeah, they definitely can, and part of the reason that they're banning these treatments that actually work, I mean, like chelation therapy, is because when people say, why does this work, they're going to get an answer, well, it takes things like mercury out of your child's body. And, any cure that actually works is going to call attention to what the original cause of the autism was, and that is a big secret that everybody's trying to protect right now.
Right. And also, when you take these vaccines, there's a protein that they put in the vaccine that blocks the body from fighting off things like autism, HIV, things of that nature. But this drug has a high rate that it cures 70% of the people that takes this drug. It reverses the autism. And I'm just amazed how they won't allow this drug over into this country.
It's all about the money. It's all about the money. Nobody wants a cure for anything in this country. They want treatments, because treatments mean that they are making money off of you for the rest of your life. If you have the creeping blorch and I cure you, you're gone. You pay that one bill, you're gone, I never see you again. If I am treating your creeping blorch, then every month you're coming back for more pills, more creams, more ointments, more checkups. That's what drives the treatment modalities in this country, keeping you on that little medical treadmill, keeping you as a profit center for the medical industrial complex.
Right. Well, thank you for taking my call, and I just wanted to get that out there.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the call. We're going to let you go here. Now then, let's get on over to Hillary Rodham Clinton. More and more U.S. intelligence experts are standing up to saying that they're very, very concerned over secrets that were in Hillary's private emails. Now, Hillary's defenders are saying, well, this stuff wasn't classified when I got it. There's actually no information to support that, but that's their excuse. Well, when we got it, it wasn't classified, and they classified it after we had it, and hey, what are we going to do? Well, if you get a notice that a document in your possession is classified, you're supposed to take steps to secure it, like take it off a publicly accessible email server that's open to hacking. But there's a great deal of concern that a huge amount of information has gone out that shouldn't have gone out. More and more people are saying it's time for a criminal prosecution of Hillary Clinton because she has exposed mountains and mountains of classified information to spying. And it's far worse than the mishandling of information that saw the former CIA director Petraeus lose his job and sentenced to 2 years of probation and a $100,000 fine. Petraeus just basically mentioned something classified to his mistress, and that was enough to take him out of his job. Here we have Hillary Clinton had all this classified information on a wide-open, easy-to-hack private email server. And by the way, there's more in there than just the classified information. One of the emails that surfaced, the ones that Sidney Blumenthal provided copies to the Congressional Investigating Committee, had Hillary Clinton describing British Prime Minister David Cameron as unsure, inexperienced, oblique, and largely uncommitted. Basically bad-mouthing him because he wasn't as willing to fling British sons and daughters into bloody combat as Hillary herself was. Now, another one of these emails that has surfaced has shown that Hillary Clinton and her State Department were very much involved in promoting the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, this is an embarrassment because, by and large, the Democratic Party and Democratic voters were opposed to TPP. And Hillary Clinton last Thursday was trying to distance herself from this deal, saying, I was never really involved in this initiative, and yet, as Secretary of State, she publicly promoted TPP 45 separate times. And this latest released email shows that, yes, Hillary Clinton, behind the scenes at the State Department, was out there pushing this on other countries as hard as she could. Now, the good news is, the negotiations for the Trans-Pacific Partnership are taking place right here on the island of Oahu. And the latest word we have right now is they've slammed into a brick wall. They cannot reach an agreement. One of the big sticking points, as I predicted it was going to be, was the idea of banning all labeling of GMOs, which is now mandatory labeling is the law in many of these countries. And they don't like to back up and reverse course, especially to the Asian mindset. That's a bad thing. And so this TPP is in serious trouble over here. Now, we've been talking about Hillary's foundation and all the people making kind donations to it, and it turns out that there have been some quid pro quos. More about this when we come back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, we were talking about this very generous donation the Swiss bank UBS made to the Hillary Clinton Foundation. It included $1.5 million to Bill Clinton for speaking engagements and additional donations. Now we're finding out why they were being so generous. Apparently, Hillary Clinton, while she was Secretary of State, intervened to protect UBS from the IRS, thereby undermining the United States Justice Department's so-called Swiss bank program that was targeting offshore banks that were assisting U.S. tax evaders. While Secretary of State Hillary Clinton assisted UBS in scaling down the level of cooperation they were required to do with the Justice Department regarding accounts of American tax cheats. In other words, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, was helping U.S. tax cheats evade the Department of Justice's program to go after them over in those Swiss bank accounts. It's nasty stuff out there. And word is getting out. I'm still getting all these emails saying, oh, you just hate women. You don't want a woman president. You're a misogynist. All the rest of this other stuff. I don't have a problem with a woman president. I have a problem with this woman being president. Now, we are hearing more and more talk about Joe Biden as stepping into the fray to challenge Hillary for the Democratic nomination. They're already making plans to go up against her in Iowa and New Hampshire. They're already engaged in the mechanism. They're putting together the committees, the financial system, all of that. And as I mentioned to that caller before, this idea that Biden is stepping in at this late moment because his late son said to, it's a romantic story. But they're putting it out there to sort of obfuscate the fact that the Democratic leadership knows they're in trouble. They're standing on the bridge of the USS Clintanic, overloaded with Hillary's political baggage. The water is lapping around their ankles, and they're in trouble. Sticking with Hillary will guarantee a GOP White House win next year. Joe Biden was their plan B. He's being moved into their plan A. A senior advisor to Joe Biden's late son, Beau, is now joining the Draft Biden Super PAC to start laying the groundwork to go after this. Another article on the same topic over in Financial Times. As Hillary Clinton stumbles, some Democrats turn to Joe Biden. Go with Joe. There's the campaign button right there. Go with Joe. I'd wear one of those. Alrighty. Now then, very revealing article from Blacklisted News. No surprise to anybody here. Politicians from both sides of the aisle, corruption has destroyed America. Gee, you think? Everybody in Congress has a for sale sign out. They got red light bulbs on their front porch there. They got little change machines on their belt. That's what they're there for. Get voted into power and sell favors. That's what they are doing. The erosion of laws controlling such behavior has basically made open season for all the corrupting influences to march up on Capitol Hill. That's what the centralization of power in Washington, D.C. has done. They've turned the Capitol building into a one-stop shopping mall for all the corrupting influences in our country. And we've been seeing the effects. We've been seeing the effects, whether it's mandatory vaccines, GMO labeling to be banned, Gulf of Mexico oil disaster, Hanford, whips, all of it. The country's for sale, and Congress has been selling it out from under you. Day by day by day by day. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Matthew in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Kind of expanding on this. If we get another Bush or Clinton, that's the end of the country. We're going into martial law. But what I want to talk about today is basically what happened in 2008. People think everything's fine, but the more I look at this, there's no way that this is not going to turn out to be the biggest disaster in world history. And I was trying to get your opinion, because you've studied history a little better than I have, over, Russia and these things. Like, what happens when it collapses? And, like, on this scale, like, how disastrous is it going to be? Is it going to be World War III? I mean, I think it's
No, they're trying to start World War III to get out of the mess, because that's what the United States has done twice before. Crash of 1907, get into World War I. Crash of 1929, get into World War II. The conventional wisdom is a world war is going to fix the economy. No, it really doesn't, but what it does do is distract the people from what's really going on, why they're so miserable, why there are shortages and hunger and collapsing infrastructure. Well, there's a war on. We can blame all of this stuff on the war. And they're trying to do it a third time, except that it's a much sadder but wiser American people. We understand that's what's going on.
Roger.
They're trying to get a big bloody war going so that we stop blaming the U.S. government for all the hardship we're enduring.
Right. We are sadder and wiser now, and that's kind of my point. Syria didn't work. Iran didn't work. Russia didn't work. So what if the war does start and the economy does come down like it has to? I mean, there's no way we can keep this detonation going. Then what's going to happen?
Well, most of the devastation will be felt by the financial class. There are going to be hardships, and again, the model I like to look at is the collapse of the former Soviet Union. There's going to be about 3 or 4 months where ordinary people are going to be getting by with barter. We're going to have to look out for ourselves, our families, our friends, our neighbors. We're going to have to develop a strong sense of our local community. As these national corporate political systems that we've been encouraged to be dependent on are going to prove to be very undependable. And then we're going to come out of the other side, and we're going to have a much better country where we, the people, are going to be reminded we have to maintain control. Because if we just sit back and let private interests take control of our country, they're going to run the country for the benefit of the private interests. That's what got us into this mess. What I am hoping will come out of this is because of economic globalism, all of these private central banks are now tangled up with each other. And when they come down, they're going to come down all across the globe at the same time. That is historic. Up until now, when all these private central banks were running more or less independently, when one collapsed or was kicked out by its host country, the other nations with private central banks would leap in, give new funding, start a war if necessary to bring the private central bank back in. Under the current circumstance of globalization, it's all going to crash at the same time. And we, the people of planet Earth, need to be ready to stand up and say, okay, fresh start, no more private central banks in charge of our national currency. We need public currencies that are handled as a public utility, just the way the United States started. That worked for the people and the nation, and our currency should not be a privatized for-profit operation for any money junkie anywhere ever again. First person who stands up and says, let's restart the private central bank, we give them a good thick coat of tar and feathers, and we run them out of town on a redwood rail with lots of splinters.
I agree, but going back to your point, and we got to rely on our friends and neighbors. Going back to the 1950s, we used to have a lot more community.
Yes.
I mean, but now I can't even tell you the last time I saw a block party. You know what I mean? So it seems like it's just going to be just chaos. I mean, you look at Baltimore,
I would disagree. I would disagree, and I know about the block party. We actually have restrictions on the homeowners association against having too large a party outside our premises. So a block party is actually against the rules. But you need to start now. Just make a point of going to your neighbors and saying, hi, how are you? Nice flowers, nice dog. And just start building those friendship networks, because those are going to become crucially important to getting through the coming economic crash. And yeah, your neighbors may think you're a bit of a nutcase, waving over the fence and smiling and everything, but that's how you start it. That's how you pull back from this isolation that government and media and technology have imposed on us. Just go on out and start making friends with your neighbors. That's all it's going to take. Thank you for the call. I got to let you go. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. And let's talk about Planned Parenthood. And over the weekend, I kind of got inspired, and I made up all these little illustrations, which promptly triggered huge volumes of nasty mail from the feminazis and Planned Parenthood supporters. But the story is continuing to evolve, and there's an article over on westernjournalism.com. A former director of Planned Parenthood has gone public, saying that, yes, indeed, Planned Parenthood tries to convert every phone call, every visit into an abortion. It's their big-ticket item, and they see it as a revenue-generating visit. Every client visit has to be a revenue-generating visit. Now, this lady, her name is Abby. She left Planned Parenthood in 2009. She was promptly sued by Planned Parenthood out of concern that she was going to talk about what she had been seeing inside. Now, the lawsuit against her failed because there is no law saying that you cannot become pro-life at any time you want to. And so we're getting confirmation from a former director of Planned Parenthood what's been going on behind the scenes. A third video has come out showing a Planned Parenthood director literally standing over dead fetuses discussing prices, kind of like the meat counter over there at the supermarket. And last week we were talking about this very strange situation where Planned Parenthood went to court and got a judge to block the release of any more videos. And first of all, that's a violation of the First Amendment. It represents prior restraint. And they were causing a lot more damage by just overtly trying to shut these videos down. And now it's coming out. One of the videos, the one they were afraid of, apparently shows babies that survived the abortion. And the issue here is, under federal law, babies that survive a late-term abortion have to be cared for and kept alive. It is a crime to just allow such a baby to die. And apparently some of these companies that have been buying biological materials from Planned Parenthood are saying the fetuses are arriving intact, all in one piece. The group that leaked this video says they've got about another 8 yet to go that are coming out. Well, Barack Obama has now waded in on the issue and said, pay no attention to what's going on over there. All of these Planned Parenthood videos, they're complete fakes. They're hoaxes. Those really aren't the directors of Planned Parenthood in there. They're just incredible lookalikes from the Celebrity Lookalike Service. I mean, that's how desperate they are. They're out there saying the videos were all fake. They're a hoax. It's a big conspiracy theory from the vast right-wing conspiracy people here. Even big labor is getting in on this thing, saying, oh, this is all about, this is all extremist and it's politically motivated. We're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
So Planned Parenthood, Mike, is like a taxpayer-funded murder operation by the U.S. government.
It's hard not to agree with you. And, again, my personal position on abortion is that I understand it is sometimes necessary. The life of the mother is at risk. Cases of rape or incest or where the baby is going to be born hugely damaged, yeah, I'm okay with that. What I have a problem with are women who don't want to acknowledge their own sexuality, and they go on out and saying, I'm not that kind of girl. They don't have birth control with them. They get a few drinks into them, and they find themselves pregnant, and they just say, okay, I'll get an abortion as retroactive birth control. That I have a problem with. I have a real problem with all of these people out there saying, well, it's not really a human being until it's born. Okay, you don't know when that biological entity is able to feel pain or fear. You just don't know that. And I don't think there's one point where you can say, not human this second, human the next. It's a continuum. It's a real continuum. Yeah.
There's just no morals anymore, though. Like, you got the pedophile ring in Britain and over here, all the way up to the power, the top powers of the country, and you got this. I mean, it's just a murder incorporated. It's sad, man.
Well, it's more than that. I mean, it's this idea of arrogating the right to say what is and is not a human being. And as I mentioned last week, the last person to claim that right and that authority wore a Charlie Chaplin mustache, and he lost World War II. And it does betray a certain callousness toward human life in general. And everybody's out there saying, oh, this all goes back to Margaret Sanger, what a wonderful woman she is. Hillary Clinton's out there saying, oh, I admire this woman. This woman was out there saying the black population needed to be eradicated, or words to that effect. I've got a graphic with the exact quote on the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com. And again, I understand there's a population problem, and there always will be, because sex is a lot more fun than dying. I have a problem with those who decide that they have the right to tell others who lives, who dies, who can have children, who cannot. I have a real problem with that one.
And Mike, on Charlie Chaplin, did you ever, on YouTube, there's a video somebody made. It's called The Greatest Speech Ever Told, and it's like, based on that Great Dictator movie.
Yeah, it's a clip from Charlie Chaplin's Great Dictator, which was his first talkie, and he was trying to make a statement about what was going on in Nazi Germany at the time, and he ran into a lot of opposition, because when he was making the movie, Hitler still looked good to a lot of people because of the German miracle with the economy and everything, and a lot of what the bad side of Nazism hadn't surfaced yet, just like a lot of the bad side of the United States has yet to surface. But it is a great speech.
Everybody should watch that video, though. That video, that's a great speech.
It really is, and people who are really like that are never allowed to enter politics. That's just the way it is. The machine. Yeah, Ron Paul, Donald Trump. The machine only wants those who will serve the machine, without question, without hesitation, without compunction. They look for sociopathic personalities with no sense of morality or ethics whatsoever.
I hope Donald Trump has a bulletproof vest and he's not using emails. I hope he's using Mule.
No, I agree. If they can't Ron Paul him, they'll Robert Kennedy him.
Yeah, message by Mule, man. That's it. Because they probably got dirt on him. Yeah, the NSA probably got stuff on him because he made a lot of phone calls.
Well, they may. So far, nothing has surfaced. And I'm sure Donald Trump has done a few things in his life that he'd like to remain hidden. But I think it's a question of scale. Whatever Donald Trump has done is small potatoes compared to the enormity of what Hillary Clinton has done. And by the way, over the weekend I put up that little article, the Epic of Clinton Mess, and it's by no means complete, but it does basically show a lifelong career of corruption, cover-up, assassination, death by both Clintons. And we don't need another one in the White House. The White House is not supposed to be an hereditary office passed back and forth between two dynastic families. And it's not.
I said it before. She don't want to be she wants to be your champion. It's more like she wants you to be your chump. So people wake up.
Well, that's true of most politicians these days.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, we're going to let you go here. All righty, there's a new film out, The Look of Silence, and it's dealing with the 1965 Indonesian genocide. And apparently the film is already attracting a great deal of controversy because the film basically points out how the U.S. government was involved in the genocide and is demanding the release of CIA, military, and other governmental records related to the mass killings in Indonesia. 1.5 million people dead. Going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. And let's talk about, since the caller mentioned it earlier, the vaccine issue. It's not going away. Over in Rhode Island, they have just passed a law requiring the HPV vaccine for all middle school students. Now, this is a very expensive shot. It's about $300. The doctor gets half of it. The HPV vaccine only lasts for 5 years. Then it needs a booster shot, meaning another shot. These middle school students, by and large, most of them are 5 years away from being sexually active at all. This is just pure profit for the vaccine companies. And the HPV, cervical cancer, is like 0.1% possibility that any girl is going to get it, and certainly no guy's going to get it. It's just cranking out more profits for the vaccine companies. Now, over in North Carolina, their legislature was getting ready to pass a mandatory vaccination bill similar to California's Senate Bill 277. The public outcry was so furious, North Carolina's just dropped the whole idea. I guess standing in front of those windows with flaming torches and pitchforks and glaring at them may have had something to do with it. But the Center for the Disease Control has just announced a new list of recommended vaccinations. They're not mandatory yet. Recommended vaccinations. 271. When this whole vaccine thing got going 10 years ago, there was 4 or 5. Now it's up to 40. Now they have a list of 271 new vaccinations they're recommending. The kid's going to explode from that many shots. Just puffs up and go bang. We'll put them back together for you. Here's the bill. And this sort of leads into this very interesting article that came out from ActivistPost.com called Official Science, the Grand Illusion for All the Robots. And they're using the term robots in its original meaning, which is a slave, robota. And it's talking about the same thing I've been saying for quite some time here. Science has become the new religion as far as the rulers are concerned. We're out of the age where the rulers can go to a priest and say, here's some money, tell everybody they have to help us invade the Holy Lands. And now the rulers simply go to scientists, give them a bunch of money, a bunch of funding, a bunch of media attention. Say, you will tell the masses that humans are warming the globe and they have to pay a carbon tax. And this article is talking about the schism that is opening up between official science, humans are warming the world, and reality. We've had several record-setting winters in a row heading into a new one. And it's talking about the high degree of fraud that is being engaged in to serve various commercial and political purposes. Which brings us to Obama, who earlier today announced his major climate change plan. We're going to reduce carbon emissions. Now, they're trying to say climate change, but they're still targeting carbon. Targeting carbon only works if you think the world is getting warmer due to human activity. But they're looking at all those record-setting winters and saying, we can't say global warming anymore, so we'll call it climate change, but the goal is still the same, a carbon tax. Because the government's out of money. They've blown the budget propping up Wall Street, propping up Israel, paying for all these botched wars of conquest all across the globe. They didn't get the windfall of new tax revenues they were hoping for from Obamacare. This is the next card. Obama's out there saying the time has come to deal with human-caused global warming, which we can fix with a carbon tax. Now, I know a lot of you are asking about those very harsh winters we've had these last several years, but I want to assure you all we can fix those with a snow tax. Now, recently there have been scientific studies showing that solar output is in decline, but we can fix that too with a sun tax. Then we're going to have a cloud tax, an oxygen tax, a nitrogen tax, and a gravity tax. And this will fix all the problems with Mother Earth. I mean, look how well Obamacare worked out. And if you'll excuse me, I have to go bomb Syria. Now, Hillary Clinton, far from being non-committal on certain issues, she is right on board with Barack Obama's climate change plan. She's fully in support of taxing the American people for carbon to deal with human-caused global warming. Meanwhile, down under in Australia, they're again setting records this winter. Snow blankets Hobart, causing havoc on the Tasmanian roads. Sydney weather, coldest spell 26 years, and more chill yet coming. And it's not just down under. Up in Bangor, Maine, they have confirmed that so far, from January 1 to July 31st, it's been Bangor, Maine's coldest year on record ever. 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 So, now then. Getting into the world of GMO, I've mentioned before, this industry is taking very reckless, dangerous chances. Products are being put out there without adequate testing. There's no safeguards. Anytime there's a problem, they just hush it up, buy off people. I think playing with that epicite gene risks an extinction level event. And we always talk about the fact that if you have a radioactive disaster, like a 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl or a Fukushima or a Hanford or a WIP, it kind of more or less stays confined there. Not so much Fukushima, of course. But if you have a bad gene that breaks into the wild, it will go everywhere. Back when GMO technology was first being introduced, there was an effort to go on out and gather samples of non-GMO natural versions of plants. They have them in this giant seed vault up above the Arctic Circle to protect them. They went way up into the mountains of Mexico to get samples of the native maize corn plant. And they discovered those had already been contaminated with GMO pollen. That's how ubiquitous it is. So now we're looking at this article out of Patriot Rising, where apparently the GMO companies have come up with what they call the supercharged GM. In other words, the GM crops are engineered to spread as rapidly and wildly as they possibly can. Because the goal from all of this technology is to destroy the organic, natural versions of crops to make us all dependent on the GM companies for future food production. And scientists are sounding the alarm. This idea of creating GMO crops, which when they break wild will go as fast as possible, it's not only dangerous, it shows that's what the real agenda has been all along. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Fox News is on there talking about how the first presidential debate will be this coming Thursday, August 6th, which, if I recall correctly, is the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. Somewhat appropriate timing there, I think. All right, let's take a phone call here. Ron in Texas. Aloha, Ron. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Thank you for taking my call. I know you were talking about the weather temperatures in some parts of the country. I live here in central Texas, and since July 13th, every day has been 100 degrees plus for 21 days now. Mm-hmm. We missed one day. It was 99 degrees on the 15th of July.
Well, somebody did a study where they were looking at the number of days over 100 degrees across the entire United States of America, and yes, it's definitely happening, and Texas is a hot place. But there's actually only half as many days over 100 now compared to like 25 years ago. So, yeah, you're still going to get some high temperatures there, but the general trend seems to be cooling. I mean, we're below average temperatures out here in Oahu. So
we got rain one day in July, and that was on the 7th of July, and we got a 3-inch torrent of rain that came down then.
Well,
and no rain since then, and when we've had clouds that look like they could form into thunderstorms,
yeah,
we've had chemtrails come, and then there's
all right. Well, thank you very much for that. Okay, I kind of knew we were headed into trouble as soon as he said chemtrail stuff. All right, let's go ahead and grab another phone call. Lonnie in Ohio. Aloha, Lonnie. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Yes, I was just calling because, we were bringing up the subject about, taking guns and whatnot. The powers that be want us to give up our rights for security so they can spy on us, or they can justify bills like the NDAA while there's millions of illegal immigrants who are above the law in our country, and Hillary Clinton, emailing classified information on her Ashley Madison account, and they want us to give up our guns while they have armed guards, and while they,
well, the police are keep murdering more innocent Americans than the criminals are, or the terrorists are. And it is completely out of control. Every time you do anything the government says is going to make you more secure, you wind up being less secure. The NSA has made us less secure with all these backdoors they put in our computer systems. It's an absolute nonsense. And it goes back to something that was said by one of the founding fathers. Those who are willing to trade liberty for security will have neither. And that's exactly where we are today. We have surrendered our freedom, or we've had it taken away, and we're nowhere near as secure as we used to be. We're being treated like livestock. We're being treated like cattle. I mean, look at the way Planned Parenthood is behaving. That's not an attitude confined just to Planned Parenthood. It's the attitude of the entire ruling class. We're just human capital to be spent and invested in various enterprises.
Well, the agenda of security, quote unquote, and taking our guns is supposedly to protect lives while, they're starting wars for lives and selling baby parts to the highest bidder.
Look at that guy. The gun used at the Muhammad cartoon shooting in Garland, Texas, came from Fast and Furious. I mean, it's absurd.
It always just makes me wonder. And actually, I talked to you maybe a month ago about a neighbor I spoke with about your show. And I talked to him again, and I was like, hey, did you watch that show? He's like, yeah, I checked it out. He checked it out on YouTube. And I was like, what'd you think? He was like, that looked like a backyard show. It looked like a garage show or something. I'm thinking to myself.
It's an upstairs condo bedroom show, to be accurate here. There's over there.
All right. Well, it blew my mind because, if you had a fancy set and maybe if you were getting paid off by, whoever's in the background.
Well, tell him he can go and watch Brian Williams. Brian Williams gets $8 million a year and has a fantastically beautiful set to lie to you. And everybody knows that's what he's doing and what he's paid to do.
Well, I responded to him. I said, it's good information. That's what you're looking for. But I guess he was looking for the glitz and glam, and he wanted Brian Williams.
I got a haircut this weekend. What more does this guy want?
No. I might have to tell him about your show again and inform him about the haircut. Maybe he'll change his mind there. But yeah, it just makes me wonder how these people can tell you one thing and then all their actions are completely, basically in conflict with each other. It makes no sense to me. I just don't understand.
Well, it does if you're a politician. Say whatever it takes to get elected and then do whatever you're being paid to do. That's it in a nutshell.
Well, obviously the Brian Williams haircut is working successfully, and his $10 or $8 million contract and nice set, it must work. I mean, I can't understand it.
I wasn't trying to copy Brian Williams' haircut. I didn't realize that I'd accidentally done that. Anyway, listen, Lonnie, I'm going to let you go. I want to fit in one more phone call before the commercial break here. We're going to go with Mark in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Mike, a couple of things. One is this thing what Obama's trying to do with the energy, with the coal.
Yes.
For one thing, Mike Pence, governor of Indiana, has already said they won't cooperate. I think the rest of the states have to go and say, look, you can make any ruling you want. You send your agents into the state, we are going to arrest these agents. They have no jurisdiction. The sheriff in California has already shown he would take away the federal law enforcement powers away anytime federal officers come into his
well, good, because, I mean, you know, there are states that are dependent on the coal industry. And you know what's really kind of ironic? This actually goes back to the Clinton years again, where Bill Clinton declared or created the Grand Staircase Escalade Monument in Utah. And it turned out that monument sits over a major deposit of clean, low-sulfur coal. And Clinton locked it away from the American people by declaring it a national monument. And it forced American companies to go buy coal from his buddies over there in Indonesia. I forgot to put this in the Clinton mess article. I'm going to have to go back and revise that, the Grand Staircase Escalade monument. And he also violated Utah's statehood agreement because those coal resources were supposed to be Utah's to fund their education system, and he yanked that money away from them and made them dependent on federal funding and Common Core. Yeah, that one should be in the Epic of Clinton mess. I forgot to put that one in. There are so many scandals, you know. And by the way, G. Gordon Liddy has come out of retirement long enough to say, look, I was there when Nixon was doing what he was doing. What the Clintons have done is far worse, far more abundant. And, you know, nobody caught a cold during the Watergate break-in, and Hillary has a body count of 4 coming out of Benghazi. And that's just the tip of the Clinton body count.
There's another thing, too, is as far as this thing with the Syria now, it's so obvious what this is about. This is about getting Assad. I don't know if ISIS even really exists, or they're not some kind of agents or something like that.
No, it's a manufactured group like Al-Qaeda. You know, it's a front group for intelligence agencies, and I'm sure they have managed to sucker some people in there who think they're fighting for this ISIS group and don't realize they're working for intelligence agents. Back in the 1960s during COINTELPRO, a lot of these undercover informants on college campuses were able to get kids to join in doing what they were doing, not realizing they were being used as tools by the government against the very purpose they were all supposed to be there for, which was ending the war in Vietnam.
And then there's one other thing. The FBI, I believe the FBI purposely armed these guys to go into Garland, Texas now. This comes with this one gun that they got from Fast and Furious. This shows I think they wanted to go there. They weren't counting on the fact that Texans are good shots, unlike if they send them into New York or somewhere like that. Doesn't matter whether they
I agree. Garland, Texas, the Muhammad cartoon that was a setup. That was a setup to have a Charlie Hebdo incident right here in the United States of America, and it fizzled rather badly. And even if it hadn't, we all know these are staged incidents to try and get us all hot and bothered to go kill the people the government wants us to go kill. It is not working. Mark, I got to let you go. We got to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. Fox News is reporting that Joe Biden's poll numbers are up 5 points from before he indicated he was going to get into the race here. So, yeah, it looks to me like Ms. Hillary is going to be given the heave-ho, along with her First Lady, what's her name, who's linked with the Muslim Brotherhood. All righty. Now then, let's see. A couple of stories going on here. We're already seeing response to Obama's speech about carbon earlier today. And what's rather interesting is EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy is saying that all of this stuff Obama's talking about, taxes, controls, regulation, bureaucracy, is only going to have a 1/100th of 1 degree Celsius effect on global temperatures. 1/100th of a Celsius degree. That's it. But it's symbolic. It's an example that we set for the rest of the world. And, of course, we've got the sun is going into a major cooling phase. We're looking at a new mini ice age, and still they're out there. Carbon is bad. We've got to tax it. All the rest of that other nonsense here. Now, there are still more revelations coming out from Edward Snowden's document dump, including a confirmation of Echelon. Now, that's no surprise to those of you who've been reading my website or listening to my broadcast for a long time. We've been talking about this for close to 20 years. Because going all the way back to the 1980s, the United States and 4 other nations set up this global spy network, eavesdropping on satellite communications and transoceanic cables, and it was called the Five Eyes system. And the way it would work is they would spy on the citizens of each other's country, then trade the information so they could say they were technically in compliance with the law saying you cannot spy on your own people. Today, they don't even bother with that charade. Yeah, they're spying on everybody. And it's nice to get semi-official confirmation. But we've known it was there. We've got an Echelon station here in Hawaii. And we've got photos of Echelon stations pretty much around the rest of the world. We've known it's there. There's no question about it. But the latest document dump from Edward Snowden confirms it, that yes, they have been doing this all along. Now, if you are a cheeseaholic, like me, you may want to pay attention to Kraft Singles cheese because they've just recalled 36,000 cases of Kraft Singles. The problem is the thin film wrapping they put around the individual slices. Apparently there's some kind of a packaging system malfunction where a thin strip of the plastic remains attached to the cheese even after you take the whole wrapper off, and obviously if you eat that, it can be a choking hazard. The recall applies to the 3-pound and 4-pound sizes of Kraft Singles American and White American pasteurized prepared cheese product with a best when used by date of December 29th, 2015 through January 14th, 2016. So just keep an eye and pay attention, and there's a recall out for those. Or if you don't make the recall, just be very careful peeling that plastic off because apparently there's a second thin strip in there that shouldn't be there. Now, here's a very interesting story. This is out of Raw Story. And they're talking about this behavioral psychologist who makes money by training law enforcement officers to shoot first and deal with the consequences later. Then he turns around and makes more money being called as an expert witness in the resulting court trials. Now, this is Dr. William J. Lewinsky, who offers seminars to law enforcement departments saying shoot first and deal with it later. He's an editor for the American Journal of Psychology. I'm sorry. An editor for the American Journal of Psychology says this guy is talking pseudoscience. And he's out there. He's one of the reasons police are trained to just pull the trigger first and deal with things afterwards. And remember, the whole field of psychology is a myth. It's not a science. There's no meter they can hook up to you that says this person is a sociopath, that person is manic depressive. It's always subjective. It's based on the opinion of one of the priesthood of psychiatry saying, I think this person is suffering from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which we know is a made-up disease, because the guy who made it up admitted it, or orthorexia nervosa, mental illness because you want to eat healthy. It's always somebody's opinion, and yet psychologists are considered expert witnesses in court cases, even though there's no factual basis for anything that they say. By the way, 73% of all inmates who die in prisons in the United States of America haven't been convicted of a crime. They're waiting for their trials. That's how bad the prisons in the U.S. are right now. I'm not surprised the U.S. government refused to let the United Nations come in and look at our prisons. They're not the spanky, clean, shiny, modern facilities we see in movies anymore. Now, somebody made a big deal about this religious group that wants to have a statue of Satan in Detroit. And, okay, I think anybody who for thousands of years has maintained the imposing position of spiritual head of 2/3 of humanity and political head of the whole of it has got to have executive ability. I think he's overdue for a statue. And everybody's up in, oh, you can't have this. It's Satan. Well, to each their own. You know, it's either Satan or the cosmic Jewish zombie, one of the others here. Now, if you are a person who likes to sing the song Happy Birthday, you may have noticed that you don't actually hear that very much on TV shows or radio. They always have some other little song. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, so forth and so on. That's because since 1935, Warner Chappell has a copyright on the Happy Birthday song. And a lot of people are saying, that's nonsense. You can't go out and just copyright a popular folk tune like that. But Warner Chappell did. And anybody who uses the Happy Birthday song has been getting sued for the last 70 years. Well, apparently they went one lawsuit too far, because the latest target of a lawsuit over infringement of their copyright on the Happy Birthday song found a 1927 songbook with the Happy Birthday song in it, confirming that it was in the public domain. And so Warner Chappell's copyright is probably going to be invalidated, and everybody who's been sued by them for the last 70 years is probably going to countersue to recover damages. I think the ideas of patent and copyright have become very much abused. The original purpose of those laws was so that somebody who invested the time and talent to create a new entertainment, a new work, a new product, had a reasonable window of time to make a profit off of that invention or that development, and then after that it would enter the public domain for the betterment of society as a whole. And this started coming undone, believe it or not, by the Walt Disney Corporation, which was concerned that the original copyrights on Mickey Mouse were about to expire. And so they went and lobbied Congress to change the law to allow copyrights to be continued in perpetuity. And then it was expanded to patents. And everybody just started making huge amounts of money. Oh, this is patented, this is patented, this is copywritten. And there are entire law firms that do nothing but go out and make fortunes suing people for what is usually inadvertent infringement of intellectual property. And a big part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership were granting more and more power to these law firms to say, oh, that particular period, that was copied from our little journal over here, and we're going to sue you for that. Now, for those of you who are fans of the Top Gear show, as it used to be, the BBC is bringing it back with all new presenters, but Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond, and James May are going to make a new auto show for Amazon's new streaming video channel starting next year. And on that basis alone, I'm probably going to sign up. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here. I got to do Jim Goddard's show up in Vancouver. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Genesis Communication Network. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, stay skeptical, make good choices. Share what you know with everybody that you know. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.